What if the end of the war in Ukraine will not be decided by a soldier, a general, or even a president? What if the most powerful weapon in this conflict isn't a tank, but a spreadsheet? For years, the world has been glued to the front lines. We see the trenches, the drones, the devastating human cost. We are told this is a battle for sovereignty, a 21st century fight for freedom. The headlines scream about territory, about counteroffensives, and about political summits. We track the movement of battle lines, we count the number of tanks, and we debate the impact of sanctions. We have seen billions in aid, sanctions designed to cripple an economy, and a complete reshuffling of global alliances. The official narrative is a binary conflict: Russia versus Ukraine, Moscow versus the West. But what if that entire narrative is just the public-facing story? What if this war is no longer a war for territory, but a war of industrial attrition, designed to bleed rivals dry? While we watch the battlefield, the real war is being fought in corporate boardrooms, on stock tickers, and in the secure servers of central banks. The front line, in truth, has barely moved in over a year. It's a horrific, bloody stalemate. A 21st century Verdun, chewing up lives and equipment at a rate not seen since the last World War. But global profits, they have not been in a stalemate. The flow of global resources has not been in a stalemate. The redrawing of the world's financial and energy maps is happening at light speed. So if both sides are militarily exhausted, who or what is actively preventing a ceasefire? Who benefits most from a war that never ends? To understand the future, you have to follow the money. Let's start with the most obvious beneficiary: the defense industry. This war has been the greatest marketing campaign in modern history. The conflict has become a live-fire showroom for 21st century weaponry. The demand for artillery shells, air defense systems like the Patriot, and next-generation drones is limitless. Look at the 2025 profit forecasts. Lockheed Martin, the world's largest defense contractor, has raised its financial outlook, citing surging demand directly linked to the conflict. RTX, formerly Raytheon, has seen its sales for missile systems and air defense skyrocket. Northrop Grumman is producing artillery shells at a rate not seen in decades. This isn't a conspiracy, it is simply their business model. A war of attrition, where equipment is consumed as fast as it's produced, is the perfect scenario for recurring revenue. But the real genius of this model is what we call the vampire effect. The West has donated vast portions of its own military stockpiles to Ukraine. Those stockpiles are now dangerously low. This means that for the next decade, these companies are guaranteed multi-billion-dollar contracts just to refill their own domestic arsenals, regardless of whether the war ends tomorrow. For this sector, a permanent, low-intensity conflict is the ideal business model. A sudden, lasting peace, that for them would be a bear market. Now let's look at the second winner: the global energy market. Before the war, Europe was inextricably linked to Russia by a web of pipelines. Cheap Russian gas fueled the German industrial machine. That era is over. The destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines was not just an act of sabotage. It was a physical point of no return. It permanently severed the main artery. This created the single largest energy vacuum in modern history, and that vacuum had to be filled. It was filled at a massive premium by tankers, specifically by liquefied natural gas, or LNG, and the world's new dominant supplier is the United States. In less than 3 years, the US has become Europe's single largest source of LNG, providing nearly half of all its imports. This isn't a temporary fix. All across the coasts of Germany, Spain, and the Netherlands, new multi-billion-dollar LNG terminals are being built. These terminals are a 30-year infrastructural commitment. Europe, in an attempt to escape dependency on one volatile ally, has simply swapped it for dependency on another. As a recent report from the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies warned, this new reliance on American LNG creates its own new instability. This isn't just a temporary shift, it's a permanent, structural reorganization of the world's most important commodity. That kind of change doesn't get undone by a simple peace treaty. But while the West is focused on these two massive expenditures, funding the war and re-engineering its entire energy grid, there is a third, silent beneficiary. One that is not spending hundreds of billions. One that is not depleting its stockpiles. One that is, in fact, winning the peace while the West pays for the war. That, of course, is China. This conflict has been a geopolitical gift for Beijing. First, it has secured a vital economic partner that is now entirely dependent. Russia, cut off from Western markets, is now selling its vast reserves of oil and gas to China at a significant discount. This provides Beijing with decades of cheap energy, insulating its manufacturing economy from the very price shocks that are crippling its rivals in Europe. Second, China is watching its primary global competitor, the United States, get deeply entangled in a protracted proxy conflict. It is watching the U.S. deplete its advanced weapons stockpiles, the same stockpiles it would need in a potential conflict in the Pacific. It is watching the U.S. Treasury spend hundreds of billions of dollars, driving up its own debt and inflation. All of this, without firing a single shot, or spending a single yuan. The relationship, confirmed just this month in meetings between Russian and Chinese leadership, is asymmetric. Moscow is now the junior partner. Beijing is able to present itself to the global south as a peacemaker, an alternative to the forever wars of the West, all while its economic and strategic position is strengthened every single day the war continues. This brings us to the deepest, most hidden layer of this conflict, the war that is being fought not with drones, but with dollars. For 50 years, the world has run on the US dollar. Its status as the global reserve currency is the foundation of American power. It means the U.S. can print money to fund its deficits, and it means it can sanction any country by cutting it off from the global financial system. And in 2022, the West deployed this nuclear option by freezing over $300 billion of Russia's central bank assets. This was meant to be a killing blow. But it had an unintended consequence. It was a shot heard, round the world. To every other nation, from Saudi Arabia to India to Brazil, the message was clear. Your dollar reserves are not your own. They are a privilege, which can be revoked at any time based on U.S. foreign policy. This act, more than anything else, gave a strong fillip to the idea of de-dollarization. The BRICS alliance is expanding, not because they love Russia or China, but because they are seeking an alternative to a financial system where one country holds the off switch. We are now seeing more global trade, especially in oil, being settled in Chinese yuan, in Indian rupees, in UAE dirhams. This isn't about creating a new single currency to replace the dollar, it's about building a parallel system to avoid the dollar. The freezing of Russia's assets may have mortally wounded the very system of globalized trust that the dollar relied upon. This is the true long-term threat. This is the real spreadsheet that will define the rest of the 21st century. So what factor will finally end this war? It won't be a decisive battle. It won't be a grand peace summit in Geneva. This war will end when one of three factors on the spreadsheet finally tips into the red. The first is industrial exhaustion. This is no longer a war of tactics, it's a war of production. It's a 1940s-style race. We see Russia, despite sanctions, surging its ballistic missile production. We see Ukraine, with its innovative, startup-driven drone program, being countered by Russia's move to industrial-scale mass production of its own drones. The war ends when one side physically cannot produce one more drone, one more artillery shell, or, as we are now seeing from Russia's recruitment of foreign fighters, find one more man. The second factor is political exhaustion. The war ends when the cost on the spreadsheet for Western leaders, in the form of domestic inflation, national debt, and voter anger, finally becomes more politically dangerous than the cost of a Russian victory. It ends when a new crisis, perhaps a financial crash or a new conflict elsewhere, simply dominates the budget and the headlines. And the third factor, the one we never see coming, is the black swan, a sudden, internal political collapse in Moscow. A technological breakthrough on the battlefield, perhaps true AI-driven drone swarms, that shatters the stalemate overnight. The kinetic war in Ukraine will eventually stop. It may freeze along a new line of control, a new iron curtain dividing Europe. But the real war, the economic war for resources, the industrial war for production, and the financial war for the future of the dollar, that war has already been unleashed. And its consequences have set the stage for the next 50 years. So the next time you see a headline about the front line, ask yourself, who really benefits from one more day? And what price are we all paying for their profit?